All right, we are recording and we are good to go. Thank you all for joining me today. We are going to be talking about the Genderbread Activity. So is anybody familiar with this before? Has anybody utilized this tool or heard of this tool?
Yes.
Okay, fuck. I was like, a couple of you guys may have heard of it. If not, even better. It's easy and nice to walk through. I love this activity because you can use it with a wide range of people. You can use it with clients, you can use it with adult clients, you can use it for yourself, you can use it with students of all different age ranges. I know I've used this activity with adolescents. Probably the lowest age I want to say I've used this with is age 13, but I've also used this activity with adults. So what is the genderbread person? What is it that we're talking about today? I know I emailed you all the handout, but I'm also going to be showing it on this screen. So no pressure. If you have not looked at it beforehand, everything you need will be right here. If you have a pen, if you have some paper, you are going to be doing the activity during this demonstration. So just be sure to jot down some of your own notes because I will be asking some questions about the process for you and just, your overall understanding. So my philosophy is that, teaching demonstrations, activities they're a lot more smooth. They're a lot more fun if it's not just me yammering on forever. I like to have participation. So I'm excited. So the Genderbread Person, it's an interactive tool to help understand gender and sexuality. It's broken up into 4 different constructs. We're going to be looking at gender identity, gender expression, anatomical sex, and also attraction, broken up in a couple of different ways. And I like this activity because it's really simplistic. It'll also show just the complexity of how gender constructs show up in our society. And we'll also be looking at how gender and sexuality really exist more on a spectrum. So trying to get away of that idea of, man, woman, gay, straight, and really sort of showing broadly where you can fall and how you can use that. All right, so if you all are ready, this is our Genderbread Person. This is a super print-friendly handout. It's also, like I said, available online. I did send you all the website if you want to use this in your own classes, if you want to use this with your clients. There is a breakdown, literally a step-by-step instruction for how to go through it, like a lesson plan, and also just some more information on sort of explaining the reason for each place. So first, this is up here now. Don't worry if you can't see it again. I'm going to break it down and walk through it slowly. So like I said, you all will be participating in this activity. So we are first going to look at that first construct, which is gender identity. All right, so you all see that first part here broken up. And what I want you all to do is think about your own gender identity. So don't think of a client, don't think of a student. Try to do this activity as if it is yourself. And no one will have to share. I will ask for participants at the end, but no pressure. Just do this for you, though. So what I want you to do is just mark where you feel like you fall as far as gender identity. And so this is on a spectrum. So one way I like looking at the spectrum is thinking about it from like 0 to 100%. And then you're just going to mark a dot or an X. And same thing, 0 to 100%. This is looking at womanness and manness. And that's however you describe that, right? And so when we're looking at gender identity, this is looking at internally, right? This is how you identify yourself. This is how you define gender, and based on how much you feel like you align or don't align with the society's definitions of what gender will be. So this isn't how you outwardly express yourself, it's how you're conceptualizing yourself, how you define yourself, how you see yourself fitting in. There's a couple of different examples up there. We have, and like I said, they're examples, they could very much look different. We have if somebody might identify as a woman, as a man, two-spirit, or gender queer, and what that might look like. But of course, that can be a variety for even if you use those same definitions for yourself. And so, all right, I am going to keep on going. Let me know if you want me to slow down at all or go back to any of these. We're also going to have a lot of time to talk through these a bit more thoroughly. But yeah, I really do enjoy this. One fun fact about gender identity is people typically start forming their own sense of gender identity around the ages of 3 and 4. And after that age, your identity, it gets a lot harder and harder to change, which might be surprising to some people. But we see that identity becoming really, really ingrained at a young age. All right, gender expression. Same thing, you're going to be marking along that spectrum for how you identify femininity and masculinity. Have a couple examples up there as well. So this is really going to look at that external representation, right? So how do you demonstrate who you are? How do you, that might be through actions, it might be through how you dress, it might be through how you behave, how you interact with other people. It's what you're showing to the outside world around you. How does society interpret those gender norms? What might that look like for you? Like I said, gender identity, we are really looking at internal. Gender expression, what is on the outside? What are you showing? All right, I'm going to continue to the next one. All right, anatomical sex. So this is looking at femaleness, maleness, and also the sex that you were assigned at birth. On the left-hand side, we still have that on a spectrum, but for that second part, we just have a box, right? Because typically when sex is assigned at birth, it hasn't been on a spectrum, right? It's looking at, how are you labeled by society, maybe medical staff, parents. We have a lot of like gender or sex reveals, like what was that before you were actually interacting with the world and having your own experiences? What sex were you assigned at birth? The way I look at anatomical sex is we're looking at more of measurable objective features, right? Looking at, biology, physiological, looking at maybe hormones, genitalia, sex organs, voice, pitch, those type of characteristics. Am I going too fast for anybody? Beautiful. All right, the next one we are going to look at is attraction. Now, those first three constructs we looked at were really looking at gender, right? Gender and sex, where this last one we're looking more at attraction, possibly sexual orientation, and breaking that down a bit further. So there's two different categories here because we have sexual attraction, which we're looking at, who do you feel physically pulled or connected to? Sexual attraction looking at that want, that need, that desire for physical, sexual contact and relationships. The spectrum that we have up here, it's looking at what or who are you sexually attracted to? Women, a feminine presence, female people. You could be attracted to both. You might not be attracted to any, which is why, like I said, it goes from 0 to 100% and just rank at where you're falling. Similarly, looking at romantic attraction. So we're looking at, sexual attraction, we're looking more at that physical component, where romantic, we're looking more at that emotional component. So that emotional, that affinity for love, who do you feel romantically and emotionally connected to, right? And a lot of times people might not have both of those, right? You might not have that, someone who identifies maybe as asexual might be a little lower on the spectrum for sexual attraction, but a bit higher on romantic attraction. Someone who has, who identifies as aromantic might be higher on the sexual attraction, but be lower on the romantic attraction. Like I said, that can really vary for everybody though. All right. Is anybody still finishing, or have we all marked our activities up? All right, great. All right, so I've been talking for a fair amount, so I want to connect with you all and see what this process was like for you. If anybody is willing to step in and share, if you want to kind of talk through how you marked up your activity and, maybe why you felt, how when you were interpreting those categories yourself, why you marked something a certain way or why you didn't. But yeah, if I could have a couple of volunteers just to share their process through this activity, that would be great. Just feel free to unmute yourself.
I've learned about a lot of this in social classes and through professional development, but I haven't really looked at it about myself before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's kind of awkward.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes it feels like yes, no, as opposed to like spectrum for me. So I don't know. It was interesting to think about in that sense.
Definitely. I appreciate that. Anybody else?
It's interesting to think about where I view my gender identity versus where like society might view like, oh, I'm probably a lot more masculine than I think I am because of the way society views some of the things I do. But I'm like, no, I'm just a lady doing these things.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so it's interesting. Going back to what you were saying, Greg, regarding like how do like sometimes it feels like really clear cut. Like you're like this end of the spectrum, this end, 100, 0%. And some people do have that experience. Some people don't, right? Or it might feel like, someone might be like, well, when I was growing up, maybe I identify more as like a tomboy. So maybe I feel like I'm more I'm more on this end of the spectrum. And I do try to be really careful to not give those kind of examples when I'm explaining the activity, because I also want to see how are you all defining masculinity or femininity, right? Like, I don't want to put how I view that, right? Like if I was like, okay, if you're thinking like, maybe if you're more of a tomboy, you're going to go on, that masculine side of things. I put my interpretation of what masculinity or femininity looks like. And I'm curious on what you all were going off, right? Like what were your definitions that you were drawing from? So yeah, how have your definitions of gender and sex evolved over time? So how has that changed for everybody?
Well, to your point, Lauren, when I was younger, I'm the oldest of 4 girls, and my mom, I have 2 twin sisters that are literally 2 years younger than me, and my mom cut all of our hair short, so we all look like boys. I'm certain just out of convenience for herself. And I remember growing up and everybody thinking I was a boy, always thinking I was a boy. And thinking back now, you wouldn't, the teasing and stuff, hopefully I'm hoping more people are evolved now, but being teased and whatever, I strived to be more feminine, go more the other way, because growing up I was always pegged as a boy. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to get my hair done, I'm going to have nails, I'm going to make sure that I look feminine. And just my gender is female, and I identify as a female. So it's interesting how it has skewed some of my thinking as I've gotten older.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, we look at those early life experiences and see like how has our family impacted us, or even like cultural influences as well too. If somebody grew up maybe in a Latina household, and we look at like machismo and how does that look, and how does that look at like gender expression or how we view ourselves. And so thank you for bringing up that point. Like I said, whether it was familial influences, cultural, media. For you all, what do you all think were some of your influences on what gender and sexuality meant? What were some of those early life or even current influences?
When I think about early gender influences, I honestly think about Queen Latifah.
Okay. Yeah, tell me more.
She honestly, she was my role model growing up, like from hanging with Mr. Cooper all the way through. And so she caught a lot of flack for how masculine she acted in a lot of her movies. And I think that is one of the reasons why I kind of have this feeling that like masculinity is always equated as power, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I can. It's interesting too when you look at if someone's like, oh, like from a feminist perspective too. If someone's like, oh, well, you're in this position of power, or in this position of authority, so like, would you rank yourself higher on the masculinity masculinity spectrum? And I think it depends on how you're looking at it, and like I said, what your worldviews have been, what has influenced you, and so forth. And so I do really like this activity, but my question for you is, instead of me just talking about how I will use this in my place of